Welcome back. Well, it is Heritage Day, but it's not all about colourful celebrations, traditional attire, languages and cuisine. There's a growing concern that some of the nation's key heritage endowments may be at risk of being lost and forgotten. Lovedale Press in Alice in the Eastern Cape is and has been in such a predicament for several years now. Thulasizwe Simelane joins us now from Alice in the Eastern Cape. Thulasizwe, take it away.
Yeah, Masiko, I've got to start by commending you about your Siswati there. Ngiyakubingelela mntwana kethu. Mlingani wami, ngiyajabula kusebenza nawe. It's always great working with you. You did a splendid job with your Siswati there. Well, we are coming to you live from one of our country's historic, heritage and culture sweet spots. We are in the town of Alice, Edikeni, in the Kume Valley, in the province known as the home of the legends, the Eastern Cape. Here, if you close your eyes and meditate for a moment, you can vividly hear with your mind's ear the thundering echoes of the footsteps of the giants of history that have trod this valley over generations. If you want the short and direct route, you can go straight to the 20th century and mouth off the names of the likes of Nelson Mandela, Govan Mbeki, Oliver Tambo, Robert Sobukwe, Robert Mugabe, among others. The list is indeed endless. They all marked this valley with their footsteps when they passed through the hallways of Fort Hare University, a mere 2 kilometers away or so from where we are broadcasting from. But if you want the longer, more scenic route through history, you'll find the footprints of kings, Hinza, Ngika, and Khachabe, among others. From the house of Palo, of course, that lineage goes. But then again, this is the site where any colonial misconceptions about Africans being unsophisticated and intellectually inferior received a ringing rejection and were rebuffed when this valley, through the Lovedale Mission, Lovedale Press and the University of Fort Hare, became a citadel of black academic and intellectual output, not only in South Africa, but across the Southern African region, as well as the African continent. Enter Lovedale Press, the focus of our broadcast today. Inscribed outside the building where we are broadcasting from are the words of A.C. Jordan, and the words go, you'll find the words of one of the literary legends, A.C. Jordan. The words say, quote, "The earliest record of anything written by any Bantu-speaking African in his own language in Southern Africa was made at the small printing press at Old Lovedale," end quote. So those are the words that are inscribed outside the building where we are broadcasting from. Lovedale Press, Lovedale Press, of course, published the very first newspaper in a black African language with Imvo Zabantsundu in 1884. It may not have been published in the exact building where we are today, but what you see in this room represents what's left of the tether of history that connects us to the original Lovedale Press, its formidable intellectual output and proud legacy. But sadly, today we are here to tell a sorry tale of the very real risk that this piece of history may not be sustained to see its 200th anniversary, which is in 2023. On that sobering note, welcome to this special Heritage Day edition of All Angles. And we are live, as I said, from what remains of the historical Lovedale Press, and it's here in Alice in the Eastern Cape. So let's get the conversation going then. Joining me now are artist Ati Padrahoga, who joins me via Zoom from Cape Town. He has been at the forefront of efforts to preserve Lovedale Press and its legacy. Reverend Bongani Ntisana joins me here. He is here at Lovedale, part of a group of people that are keeping Lovedale Press, a semblance of it going, even despite the challenges. And of course, the conversation about Lovedale would not be complete without bringing in Fort Hare University. And from there, I'm joined by the Vice-Chancellor, and that's Professor Sakela Buhlungu. So I guess, I'm spoiled for choice where to start. Let me start with you, Reverend Bongani Ntisana, and thank you for your welcome to this legendary place in South Africa, the citadel of academic excellence over the generations and output with Lovedale as well as University of Fort Hare. In 2023, we are going to be marking 200 years of the founding of Lovedale Press, and we know all about the history and its output. Will there be anything to celebrate from what you can see at the moment come 2023, given where things are in 2021?
Thank you very much for the interview. We are optimistic, thinking that we will get some help to resuscitate ourselves from this situation and be able to function as a publishing company again, and be able to move forward Lovedale Press to what it is supposed to be.
Yeah. We'll talk in a moment, Reverend, about what is remaining, all of what we are seeing here in this room, and what it is that you are hoping for, either operational resuscitation of Lovedale, or you're looking more towards the preservation of the legacy, in a way functioning as a place of memory. But we'll bring that back into the conversation. Let me go to Professor Sakela Buhlungu. Prof, thank you. Unfortunately, as we were coming into Alice, you were going out for a few days. Of course, you are the Vice-Chancellor of University of Fort Hare. Just give me a sense and draw a line for me, Prof, of the connection between Lovedale Press, Lovedale Institute, as well as University of Fort Hare, the legacy that they represent. I know that we don't have hours to discuss this, but as succinctly as you possibly can.
Thank you very much, Tula Sizwe, and thanks very much for hosting this program. Very, very briefly, the connections between Lovedale Press and the university go back to the very day that the University of Fort Hare was established in 1916. But I should just add that there are 4 institutions in that region. There are 4 institutions that matter. The first one to be established was Lovedale Press in 1823. And then, of course, in 1841, Lovedale College was established. In 1855, Hilltown High School down in Fort Beaufort was established, and ultimately, and then later, Victoria Hospital, and now the University of Fort Hare in 1916. So those bonds have remained, and you can't speak of the one without making reference to the other. So such are the connections. So I'm extending the circle here to say it's not just Fort Hare and Lovedale, but it's those institutions, all of them working together.
Yeah, absolutely, Prof. Let me bring in Ati Padra-Huga, who has been at the forefront of some of the efforts here. Ati, firstly, I've got to give credit to you, as well as people such as Mwele Lacele, who writes for New Frame, but also others who've been active with you in trying to bring attention to the plight of Lovedale. Just tell me what it is that moved you and made you feel that the story of Lovedale Press is a story that requires you to focus your energies on, and that it's a story that South Africans need to be aware of.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. For me, I grew up in the Ciskei Mdantsane, and the books that we used to read were from Ilijela Somklad. And so the imagination of the works that come out of Alice, specifically at Lovedale Press, have had an effect on how I think, how I pray, how I love. And that's the act of art making, is the act of sharing love, sometimes, and information. I feel that my artworks, my past 15 years of me working and running a studio, has been influenced by these stories that come from the Eastern Cape, as much as I have traveled the world to show the works. So our relationship starts in 2019, late winter 2019, when I went to go visit, to go buy some books, because my library was lacking in isiXhosa books. And the first time I arrived there, it was closed. And then the second time I arrived, there was Ubabu Bishopu and Ubucebo. And this is when I was able to buy the books and also get to hear the story of the appearance of the place, which is in total contradiction of its heritage and also its contribution, and also to try and think of ways. I think we came to try and think of ways in which I can pop in, do a fundraiser here, do a fundraiser there. So we started Victory of the Word as a celebration of how for 200 years or close to 200 years, the word Izwi has really, really lasted in its many, many, many challenges. And we have, like, 2023 is not our deadline, but it is a time whereby a culmination of all the works that have been happening for the past 20 years, actually, since Lovedale changed hands from the missions and was bought. We need to somehow find ways in which we can create communities and find things like that. So at the moment, we have two products whereby we have a backup buddy fundraiser, which we started last year at the middle, in the beginning of COVID, as I was thinking of the three, Bishop, Usisibulelwa, no Bucebo. So this is to help them just get along while these hard times are still hitting. And then the second one was to bring attention to younger artists,
right,
of actually what that goes in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Ati, we will talk a bit more about the fundraising efforts on your part in just a moment. But let me bring it back to Professor Sakela Buhlungu. Prof, so Ati talks about how the books that he would read growing up fired up his imagination. And, you know, because many of them were printed at Lovedale. And I like that they've framed it as Victory of the Word. Isn't that just apt to describe how the word has been victorious? I would say, Prof, I don't know what you think of this. Firstly, the output, the intellectual output coming from Lovedale and institutions such as the one you head up now, Fort Hare, presented that victory of whatever notion that, you know, Africans were intellectually inferior, in that we're able to prove that the publishing of Imvo Zabansundu, but before then, publications such as Ikwezi and others, Iskidim Samakhosa, I think the other publication was called. Just draw a line for us, Prof, in terms of the intellectual output that we are talking about here, and also some of the people that have been associated with Lovedale Press and the spoken word, written word that have emerged from this valley over the last 200 years or so.
Yes, thank you very much. The list is too long for me to kind of narrate here, but the birth and the growth and the proliferation of literature in the language is Xhosa comes from Lovedale Press. Generations upon generations of writers, they started their craft, they started with Lovedale Press, and of course, Lovedale Press didn't just do literature for the public. They also did literature for the schools. The entire school syllabus. As a child of the 1960s, and of course those before me and those after, the books that we read as we entered the schooling system were all produced by Lovedale. So indeed, such was the value and importance or centrality of Lovedale, that everything, the birth of intellectual life, the birth of the intelligentsia in the province and in the country, flowed out of Lovedale Press. So that's a very important one. So you can think of any writer that you like. You can think of A.C. Jordan. You can think of many, many others. All of them, Khubusana, and so, they were all published by Lovedale Press. And it's unfortunate that that came to an end at a certain point. Yeah. But it is that heritage that we cannot afford to lose.
Yeah, I mean, we really cannot, Prof. And I make no secret of the fact that, you know, coming down for this broadcast was a bit of a personal mission, in that I'm just astounded at the ease with which, as South Africans, we can easily lose a heritage that other countries would prize above many, many things and would fight tooth and nail to preserve. I mean, as you talk about some of the publications, just to perhaps drive it home for those who may not even know some of the publications we're talking about. Some years ago, I think it was in the early to mid-90s, there were these two drama series that were aired on SABC. There was Ityala Lamawele. Well, That was from
Yes.
S.E.K. Mqai's book of the same name, Ityala Lamawele, and A.C. Jordan's Ingumbo Yeminyanya. If I get the authors correctly. Ingumbo Yeminyanya that you were watching on SABC, well, all of that was based here. Steve Biko, you know, was at Lovedale at some point. Some of his writings, he was at Lovedale. I'm not sure about the publishing, whether it was done by Lovedale Press itself, but he certainly had his footprints here at Lovedale. And indeed, the Black Consciousness movement had a lot of their publications published by Lovedale Press. All right, we'll take a quick break and we'll continue with our conversation with Reverend Bongani Ntisana of Lovedale Press and the University of Fort Hare's Vice-Chancellor, Professor Sakela Buhlungu, as well as artist Ati Padra Huka. Stay with us. This is All Angles, live from Alice in the Eastern Cape.